Hello students, welcome to KENE'S Educare. Today in the session of class 7th history, we will read and learn about lesson number 5, rulers and buildings. So basically we will be reading about various rulers and the buildings being built by them. Okay? And in this chapter, children, we will read and learn about the following topics. First will be the introduction to the chapter. Then we will read the engineering skills and construction of the buildings. Then we will cover the topic building the temples, mosques and tanks by various rulers and why were mostly temples targeted by each ruler. Then we will read the gardens, the tombs and the very famous forts of various rulers. We'll know about the region and the empire and then we'll study the story of elsewhere as we do in every chapter. Then we will read some associated keywords of the chapter and then we will recall the chapter with the help of some exercises. Okay? Okay, let's read the introduction of the chapter. The figure shown over here. This shows the first balcony of Qutub Minar. किसी ने Qutub Minar देखा है? Can you tell me where it is? It's in Delhi. Qutub Minar, in the Qutub Minar complex. Built by Qutbuddin Aibak, constructed around 1199. Can you notice the pattern created under the balcony by the small arches? ये balcony है देखो, है ना? This is the balcony, this is the balcony. इसके नीचे ये arches दिख रही हैं, ये छोटी छोटी, ये arches दिख रही हैं. Notice the pattern created under the balcony by the small arches and geometrical designs. देखो यहाँ पे geometry भी involved है, arches भी involved है. Can you see two bands of inscriptions under the balcony? एक ये band है inscription का, एक ये band है inscription का. These inscriptions are in Arabic. Notice that the surface of the minar is curved and angular. पहली बात तो curved है और हर जगह angle created है. All the angles are there. इसे 3D effect देने की कोशिश की गई है इस building में, right? Placing an inscription on such a surface. सोचो angle ही angle created है. ऐसे में आपको कोई बोले कि inscribe करो, carve करो दीवार पे. It will be such a difficult task to do. And placing an inscription on such a surface required great precision. Only the most skilled craft person could perform this task. And remember that very few buildings were made of stone or brick 800 years ago. Very few buildings were there जो stone or brick से बनती थी around 800 years ago during the time of Delhi Sultanate in India. Delhi Sultanate. Why Delhi Sultanate? Because this Qutub Minar is built by Qutbuddin Aibak, who started the Delhi Sultanate in India, who was the founder of the Mamluk dynasty. Reading more about the Qutub Minar, the beautiful architecture. The Qutub Minar is 5 stories high. Okay, the band of inscription you see are under its first balcony. तो ये जो inscription दिख रहा है ना, ये first floor की balcony है और इसके नीचे ये inscription है. This is the inscription. Okay. The first floor was constructed by Qutbuddin Aibak, the founder of the Mamluk dynasty in the Delhi Sultanate time period, and the rest of the Qutub Minar was built by Iltutmish around 1229. Over the years, it was damaged by lightning and earthquakes and repaired by Alauddin Khilji, the ruler of the Khilji dynasty, not the founder but one of the rulers. Then Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq and Ibrahim Lodi. These people repaired the Qutub Minar, but Qutub Minar was built by Qutbuddin Aibak and Iltutmish. Okay. Reading further, between the 8th and 18th centuries, kings and their officers built 2 kinds of structures. The first were forts, palaces, garden residences and tombs. That means a very safe, protected and grandiose places of rest in this world. और दूसरा क्या category होता था? Second were the structures meant for public activity, including temple, mosque, tank, well, caravanserais and bazaars. ये caravanserais क्या है? That means people who move in group, जो caravans में जाते हैं for the trade or for visiting purposes, उनके लिए सराय बना दिए जाएं, ऐसे कुछ tent बना दिए जाए, ऐसे कुछ resting places बना दी जाएं, so that in between their trip or visit to some place, they can rest in between. Okay? So, first category of structures built by most of the kings between 8th to 18th century. First category तो ये हो गई grandiose वाली, forts, palaces, garden residences, tombs, etc., which can make and create an image of the king as being very powerful, very creative and very culturally inbound. And the second kind of structures built by most of the kings during this period of history were the public activity places: temple, mosque, tank, well, caravanserais and bazaars. Kings were expected to take care of their subjects. Subjects का मतलब जिन पे वो rule करता है. You have to take care of them. And by making structures for their use and comfort, rulers hoped to win their praise. Rulers ये सोचते थे कि शायद if we'll build temples for people, if we'll build mosque, tank, well, or these sarais and bazaars for people, maybe people will consider me as a ruler, as a very dependable ruler, and they will praise me for doing this. Construction activity was also carried out by others, including merchants. Merchants भी कुछ construction activity करवाते रहते थे on the orders of the king. Okay, to maintain the bazaar, to maintain the trade activity, right? For all these purposes, the construction activity carried on by merchants. They built temples, mosques, and wells. However, domestic architecture, that means the large mansion, haveli जिन्हें हम कहते हैं, they have survived only from the 18th century. Havelis and all these mansions were there in the 8th and 10th century also, but we have remains of only those haveli belonging to the 18th century. इससे पुरानी सारी haveli have been destroyed over a period of time due to earthquake, various natural as well as man-made calamities and so forth. Okay. Now here's an information given. Labor for the Agra Fort. आगरा फोर्ट को बनाने में कितनी लेबर लगी थी? The Agra Fort was built by Akbar. The Agra Fort required 2000 stone cutters. स्टोन को काटने के लिए केवल 2000 लोग लगे थे. 2000 cement and lime makers and 8000 laborers. This much labor was involved in making the entire fort. So you can see that making such large palaces was a very intensive job, and you needed a great proficiency in doing so, a great skill to do so. Now coming on the engineering skills in the construction during this period of history, right? Monuments provide an insight into the technologies used for construction. Monuments से क्या पता चलता है? That what kind of technologies were there in that period of history. That means what technology were used for the construction purposes in that period of history, right? Take something like a roof, for example. We can make this by placing wooden beams or a slab of stone across 4 walls. But the task becomes difficult if we want to make a large room with an elaborate superstructure. This requires more sophisticated skills. ऐसे roof बनाना difficult नहीं है. You can put a wooden beam, you can put a slab of stone, and roof is prepared. But if you have to make it in a very large room, that means in a palace if you have to do it, and along with that roof, you have to have an elaborate superstructure as well, then for that you need sophisticated skills in that, right? You have to be very proficient in your skill for doing so. Between the 7th and the 10th centuries, architects started adding more rooms, doors and windows to buildings. Historians ने study करके ये पता किया that 7 to 10th century is that period of history when architects started adding more rooms, doors and windows to the buildings. Roofs, doors, windows were still made by placing a horizontal beam across 2 vertical columns. ऐसे 2 vertical column होंगे और आप एक beam रख दोगे उसके ऊपर, right? This style of architecture was called trabeate or corbelled system. क्या बोलेंगे? Trabeate or corbelled. क्या system होता है? When you have 2 vertical column and you put a beam on it. This is corbelled system, also known as the trabeate principle of architecture. Between the 8th and 13th centuries, the trabeate style was used in the construction of temples, mosques, tombs, and in buildings attached to large stepped wells as well. Stepped wells बनाए जाते थे लोगों के लिए कि well होगा तो पानी हो जाएगा. But if you have to make a well, it will be dig very deep down, right? How will you go that deep to extract water? Steps were made so that people can easily step down up till the well and can extract water from it. This kind of well, this kind of stepped well were known as bauli. What? Baulis. Okay. So in this period of history, this 8th to 13th century period of history, Trapezoid style was majorly and highly used in the construction of temple, mosque, various tombs, and in the large stepped wells, that means baulis as well. Okay, so trapezoid principle was majorly popular during the 8th to 13th century, especially in temple, mosque, tombs, as well as in making the baulis as well. Rani Ji ki Bauri or the Queen's Stepwell. It is very famous location, very famous Bauri or stepwell located in Bundi, which is in Rajasthan. It is the largest among the 50 step wells that were built to meet the need for water. Water ki itni need thi, and there was such lack of water in that particular area, especially the entire state of Rajasthan. Now the conditions are very better, far off better. But in the historical time, in fact, you can say nearly 100 years ago also, Rajasthan was in a very bad state for the availability of water because there is a desert nearby, right? And that is why there was lack of water resources and people needed water, for which 50 step wells, that means you have a well and you have steps with the help of which you can go down to extract water. Okay, so 50 step wells were constructed in Rajasthan to meet the need of water, and Bundi is the largest among those 50 step wells. So various 50 step wells were made in Rajasthan, and this Rani Ji Ki Bauri was the largest one. Okay, why it is famous? It is known for its architectural beauty. The Bauri was constructed in 1699 CE, that means 17th century, by Rani Nathwat Ji. She was the queen of Raja Anirudh Singh of Bundi. Okay, Raja Anirudh Singh was the, you can say, supervisor, ruler, governor of Bundi, and Rani Nathwat Ji was his wife, the queen, and she constructed this. She basically ordered the construction of this architectural beauty. This is the image showing the trapezoid principle, trapezoid style of architecture. Okay. Screen in the Quwat al-Islam Mosque, Delhi, late 12th century. This is the Quwat al-Mosque. Now you will see, ye kaisa mosque hai? These are basically the remains over the period of history. Okay, these are the remains of Quwat al-Islam Mosque, which is in Delhi, made in the late 12th century. And this is the screen. You can see the screen. This is the screen. This image is showing the cobble technique used in the construction of the screen. ये जो main screen बनाई गई है, इसमें देखो क्या किया गया है. 2 vertical columns are there, as I told you. 2 vertical columns are there, and then a beam is put on it. And then a beam. I'm marking with red ink, if you can see. Huh? This is the beam, and these are the 2 vertical columns. And this is what trapezoid style was. कि आप 2 vertical pillars बनाइए और उसके ऊपर beam रख दीजिए. Right? So this is the cobbled technique which was used in Quwat al-Islam Mosque as well. To tell you further on this, 2 technological and stylistic developments are noticeable from the 12th century onwards. What is this? The first is the weight of the superstructure above the doors and the windows. Doors के ऊपर होने वाला structure, windows के ऊपर होने वाला structure. The weight of the superstructure above the doors and windows was sometimes carried by arches. Arches को weight संभालना पड़ता था इस superstructure का. This architectural form was called arcuate principle. Arcuate, when the arch has to take the weight, has to carry the weight of the superstructure. When the arch has to carry the weight of the superstructure, then it is known as the arcuate style of architecture. Okay. Second important as well as a very important technological change and stylistic development which happened from 12th century onward was limestone cement was increasingly used in construction. Limestone cement का इस्तेमाल होने लगा, which made things a little easier as well, a little stronger as well. Okay, cement is very strong, you know this, because this was very high quality cement. This limestone cement was very high quality cement, which when mixed with stone chips hardened into concrete. And this is what we do today as well. We mix the cement with the stone chips, and this makes the structure very solid, right? This made the construction of large structures easier as well as faster. So basically, Arcuate principle, Arcuate style of architecture was a new technological as well as stylistic development from the 12th century in the field of architecture. Because from now on, arches were to carry the weight of the superstructure. अब वो beam वाला system खत्म हो गया. Beam पे ही सब कुछ था ना अभी तक Trapezoid principle में. But now the arches started carrying the weight of the superstructure. And second important change which happened in the field of architecture, in the field of engineering the architecture in history, was the use of limestone cement in construction. And this limestone cement was of very high quality, and when it was mixed with the stone chips, the structure hardened into concrete and made the structure very strong. And this whole idea of using the limestone cement made the construction very easy as well as very fast. Okay. See children, this is the true arch. The keystone at the center of the arch transferred the weight of the superstructure to the base of the arch. To the base of the arch. Okay. Here. And this is the true arch detailed from the Alai Darwaza, early 14th century, built in early 14th century inside the Kuwait al-Islam Mosque, which is in Delhi. This is the true arch where the weight of the superstructure is transferred to the base. Okay. And here is a painting from the Akbarnama dated 1590 to 1595 showing the construction of the water gate at Agra Fort. Okay. True arch, and here is the water gate. Okay children, let's read temple construction in the early 11th century. Okay. The Kandariya Mahadev temple dedicated to Shiva was constructed in 999 AD of course by the king Dhangadeva of the Chandela dynasty. So there was a dynasty called Chandela dynasty, and there was a king in this dynasty belonging to this dynasty, Dhangadeva, who constructed the Kandariya Mahadev temple, which was dedicated to Shiva, constructed in 999 AD. This is the plan of the temple. This figure is showing the plan of the temple. An ornamented gateway led to an entrance, this. And the main hall, Mahamandap, where dances were performed. This is the Mahamandap, where the dances were performed. This is actually an image showing the structure of the temple, like a blueprint of the temple. And another feature, the image of the chief deity was kept in the main shrine, जिसे हम गर्भगृह कहते हैं. Okay, sanctum sanctorum, where the image of the main deity is kept. This is known as Garbhagriha. This was the place for ritual worship, where only the king and his immediate family and priests gathered. Okay, the Khajuraho complex contained royal temples where commoners were not allowed entry. The temples were decorated with elaborately carved sculptures. You can see it in the picture also. They are immense, beautifully carved sculptures throughout. All the pillars, all the pavilions, every portion of the temple is carved properly. There are sculptures all over the temple, right? And there is an exact and that elaborate complex of temple. कोई एक temple नहीं है. There is complex of temple. हर कुछ एक area में within few meters there is a temple. Within few meters there is a temple. So there is completely a complex of temples known as the Khajuraho complex of temples. Okay. Another important feature of this Rajarajeshwara temple, which is at Thanjavur, is that it had the tallest shikhar among temples of its time. Constructing it was not easy, of course, because there were no cranes in those days, and the 90-ton stone for the top of the shikhar was too heavy to lift manually. So the architects built an inclined path to the top of the temple, placed the boulder on rollers and rolled it all the way to the top. The path started more than 4 kilometers away so that it would not be too steep. This was dismantled after the temple was constructed. जब temple बन गया तो ये जो inclined path बनाया था ना, फिर इसे dismantle कर दिया गया. But the residents of the area remembered the experience of the construction of the temple for a very long period of time. Even now, a village near the temple is called Charru Pallam. That means the village of incline. That means there was a village जहाँ से inclination start किया गया था. Okay, so people have the experience of the construction of such a temple at that period of time, and we can see the evidences even in the present day time. Now coming on to the topic, building temples, mosques and tanks. The most important topic of this chapter, the buildings, and the most important buildings under any king's reign was building the temples, mosque and tank, because these were the activity centers for the people. These were the architecture where king used to show his power and wealth. Temples and mosques were beautifully constructed because they were places of worship. They were also meant to demonstrate the power, wealth, and devotion of the patron. Take the example of the Rajarajeshwara temple. Okay, an inscription mentions that it was built by King Rajaraj Deva for the worship of his god Rajarajeshwaram. So the name of the god is Rajarajeshwaram and the name of the king is Rajaraj Deva. They are quite similar, don't you think? Notice how the names of the ruler and the god are very similar. The king took the god's name because it was auspicious and he wanted to appear like a god. Not a god, but like a god. Through the rituals of worship in the temple, one god, Rajaraj Deva, honored another, Rajarajeshwaram, and this was the major practice while building the temples by the kings. The temple was basically a miniature model of the world ruled by the king and his allies. King जिस टाइप का एक कल्चर और एक टाइप का किंगडम रूल करता था ना, temples were made and based on that idea and model only. As they worshipped their deities together in the royal temples, it seemed as if they brought the just rule of the gods on earth. ऐसे लगता था that kings are the messenger of God. Kings are the one who brought the justice wala rule of God on earth. Muslim sultans and padshahs did not claim to be incarnations of God, but Persian court chronicles described the sultan as the shadow of God. Sultans अपने आप को God का incarnation नहीं कहते थे, but they used to symbolize themselves as the shadow of God. An inscription in the Kuwait al-Islam mosque explained that God chose Alauddin as a king because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon, the great lawgivers of the past. Okay, so this is how the chroniclers used to praise the king and to make a trust among the eyes of the people that he is the king who is the shadow of God, the person who is sent by God, who is the incarnation, or you can say have the qualities of the greatest lawgivers of the past. The greatest lawgiver and the architect was God himself. You know this. He created the world out of chaos and introduced order and symmetry. This is the main message you should understand, that the greatest lawgiver and the greatest architect is God. So whosoever is the shadow of God will also be equally important and great. And this is how kings used to maintain their trust and used to make people believe that this king is the perfect for them. Now here's an information about the royal architect. The Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan's chronicler declared that the ruler was the architect of the workshop of empire and religion. अगर आपको empire के बारे में पढ़ना है, if you want to know about the religion, you should see the architecture of Shah Jahan, because he is the architect of the workshop of empire and region. Okay, so this was a very greatest of great praise for any king with regard to the buildings and the architectural style. He ordered so. Now the very important point is that as each new dynasty came to power, kings wanted to emphasize their moral right to be rulers. Constructing places of worship provided rulers with the chance to proclaim their close relationship with God, because people are connected to God, and if you want to impress the people, you also have to show people that you are also connected to God. Correct? So constructing places of worship provided rulers with the chance to proclaim their close relationship with God. Especially important in an age of rapid political change. A change, basically a period where a lot of change happened in the power of throne, right? Lot of dynasties, rulers, region, conquering everything, annexation, all these things kept continuing happening in that period of 8th to 15th century. So especially in that period of time, rulers majorly emphasized on constructing places of worship. Rulers also offered patronage to the learned and pious and tried to transform their capitals and cities into great cultural centers that brought fame to their rule and their realm. So basically, they wanted to give patronage to the learned people, to the skilled people who had a lot of learning about particular religion or any of the communal ideas, right? Because after giving patronage, those people will come into your empire, preach other people about those ideas. Then you will call some other scholar. That other scholar will also come to your empire, and henceforth, a lot of scholars will assemble in your empire, and your empire will become a cultural center. It will become famous throughout the country. Then any other scholar who was not invited to the empire will also be willing to come to your empire. जिसे नहीं बुलाया गया अब उसका भी मन करेगा आपके empire में आने का, and this is how your empire will get famous, right? And this is how your rule will also get famous, and you will be considered a very powerful ruler, a very influential ruler. It was widely believed that the rule of just king would be an age of plenty, when the heavens would not withhold rain. Now, at the same time, making precious water available by constructing tanks and reservoirs was highly praised, because if the king is having a lot of rain, then it is his responsibility to provide the same water to his subjects as well. And this effort of king constructing tanks and reservoirs was highly praised by the people. Now we will read the importance of water. The Persian terms abad, or populated, prosperous, and abadi, that means flourishing. They both of these words, abad and abadi, are both derived from the word ab, and ab means water. Okay. Sultan Iltutmish, he won the universal respect for constructing a large reservoir just outside Delhi, Pune. Universal respect mil gayi because Delhi was suffering from the crisis of water. People did not have enough water. They had to go to far off places to extract water. And if a king builds a reservoir for you, builds an infrastructure with the help of which water can be supplied very easily to the people of the city, people will definitely respect it and they will praise the king for it, right? So he constructed a large reservoir outside Delhi, Kuna. It was called the Hauz-e-Sultani or King's Reservoir. Rulers often constructed tanks and reservoirs, big or small both, for use by ordinary people also. Sometimes these tanks and reservoirs were part of a temple as well, a mosque as well, or a gurudwara as well. What is gurudwara? It's actually a place of worship and congregation for Sikh. जैसे हिंदू के लिए temple है, Muslim के लिए mosque है, वैसे गुरुद्वारा. Basically anyone can enter, but gurudwara is the congregation place for Sikh. Okay. So tanks and reservoirs were built in these religious centers as well. And sometimes rulers used to construct these tanks and reservoirs for the use by ordinary people as well. Here I am showing you the image of the plan of the Jami Masjid, also known as Jama Masjid, built by Shah Jahan in his new capital Shahjahanabad between the year 1650 to 1656. Okay, so you can say this is the blueprint of how Jama Masjid used to be constructed. Actually, it was planned to be constructed. ये ऐसा blueprint बनाया गया था that this is how we will make at the Jama Masjid. Okay. Here I am showing you the image of Harminder Sahib, the Golden Temple, very famous in Amritsar, with the Holy Sarovar or the tank in Amritsar just in front of it. Okay. Now coming on to very important topic. Why were temples targeted? हर बात पे सब लोग temple क्यों तोड़ रहे हैं? What's the idea behind it? Of course, it's not any religious rage. No, it's not that. There is no religious rage behind the motive, right? Motive is something else. What? We'll read that. Because kings built temples to demonstrate their devotion to God, right? and their power and wealth as well. वो अपनी power और wealth भी तो दिखाते हैं ना with making all these grand temples. And it is not surprising that when they attacked one another's kingdoms, they often targeted these buildings, because if you destroy someone's very important, very expensive building, you will destroy their capital. You're destroying their money, you're destroying their resources, and that is what you want, to destroy their money, to make them weak, to make their resources very weak, so that they cannot show off their power and wealth, right? In the early 9th century, I will tell you a story. In the early 9th century, when the Pandyan king, Pandya dynasty थी ना south में, right? Pandyan king Sri Mara Sri Vallabha, this person invaded Sri Lanka, okay, and then he defeated the king of Sri Lanka. His name was Senavan. In the year 1831 to 1851, this was his reigning period. इन्होंने इतने टाइम पे रूल किया था. So Srimara Sri Vallabha, the Pandyan king, Sri Vallabha defeated Senavan, okay, the king of Sri Lanka. The Buddhist monk and chronicler, there was a person, Dhammakirti or Dhammakirti. He was a Buddhist monk and chronicler. He wrote that he removed all the valuables. यहाँ पे he से मतलब है Sri Vallabha. Sri Vallabha removed all the valuables. The statue of the Buddha made entirely of gold in the Jewel Palace, and the golden images in the various monasteries. All these he seized. Sri Vallabha सब कुछ उठा के ले आए थे वहां से. Sri Vallabha defeated Senavan. Sri Vallabha, I will write this. Sri Vallabha defeated Senavan, and उनको defeat करने के बाद he took all the gold valuables. बुद्ध का सोने का स्टैचू भी उठा लाए थे वो इंडिया में. The blow to the pride of the Sinhalese ruler had to be avenged. Sinhalese ruler मतलब Senavan was actually the ruler of the Sinhali kingdom. इनके kingdom को ही Sinhali kingdom बोला जाता था. Okay, जैसे यहाँ पे you have the Mamluk dynasty, you have the Lodi dynasty, you have the Mughal dynasty. Similarly, in Sri Lanka there was a Sinhali dynasty of which Senavan was one of the ruler, and Senavan got defeated by Sri Vallabha. So Sinhalese ruler wanted to take revenge against the Pandyan kings. Okay, the blow to the pride of the Sinhalese ruler had to be avenged, and the next Sinhalese ruler, Sena II, ordered his general to invade Madurai. Now the reverse will happen. Now revenge will happen. Sena I हार गया था. Now Sena II said that go to Madurai. जैसे उन्होंने हमें लूटा था अब हम उन्हें लूटेंगे. Go to India, go to Madurai and invade Madurai. And Madurai was the capital of the Pandyas. Okay. The Buddhist chronicler, again this person, Dhammakirti, noted that the expedition made a special effort to find and restore the gold statue of the Buddha. Sena II को ये था कि that we have to take revenge, but the most important part is that we have to get the gold Buddha statue back, because वही तो एक statue है जिसको हम लोग worship करते हैं, and all our money and resource have been invested in that statue. So you have to find that statue and get back that to Sri Lanka. Okay, Sena II wanted to take revenge of his father, of his predecessor. He wanted to take revenge of Sena I. So he ordered an invasion in Madurai, which was the capital of the Pandyas. He also made effort. He also gave strict orders that whatever you do, please try to restore the gold statue of the Buddha which Sri Vallabha took away. Okay, so this was the main reason why temples were targeted. Now I will tell you more information about these targeting the temples. Now, very attractive point is that Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni was contemporary of Rajendra I. During his campaigns in the subcontinent, he attacked the temples of defeated kings and looted their wealth and idols. Sultan Mahmud was not a very important ruler at that point of time, but by destroying temples, especially the one at Somnath, the most beautiful, the golden beauty of India, he tried to win credit as a great hero of Islam. Okay, अच्छा. Today we live in unity. आज temple भी है, mosque भी है, we have law and order, and we have respect for each other's religion as well and for their ideas as well. We are no more in a practice of annexation. We are no more in a practice of dominance, right? And that is why we do not have any problem like that, which happened in the history. In the historical period of time, to present your cultural value, to present your religious belief, most of the king used to do one thing, and that was destroying the symbols and the architecture or the buildings of other religion so that they can dominate the people from their ideas. Okay, but this was an old practice, especially in the historical period of time, very common at that period of time when the world was evolving with new religious beliefs and ideas. Okay, in the political culture of the Middle Ages, most rulers displayed their political might. बहुत सारे rulers ने यही किया कि अपने आप को politically strong दिखाने के लिए and to show that they are militarily very successful, they showed it by attacking and looting the places of worship of defeated rulers. And this was a very normal and very common practice in that period of history when kings used to annex and conquer over a piece of land, and then they used to put a political might. They used to show that how successful they are by attacking the places of worship of the defeated ruler. कोई अगर ruler number 1 है, ruler number 2 है, and if ruler number 1 has defeated ruler number 2, then ruler number 1 will also destroy the architecture, the building, the temples built by ruler number 2, so that he can show his political might and can show his military success. Okay, here is the image of Mahmud of Ghazni. Okay, Mahmud of Ghazni. Okay, children, let's read the beauty of the Mughal buildings, the gardens, the tombs and the forts. Under the Mughals, architecture became more complex. ऐसे simple सा कुछ design बना के building नहीं बनाते थे Mughals. They were always dealt in design, in making the design complex, in using physics a lot of time. Okay, Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir and especially Shah Jahan were personally interested in literature, art and architecture. In his autobiography, Babur described his interest in planning and laying out formal gardens placed within rectangular walled enclosures and divided into 4 quarters by artificial channel. यहाँ पे बेसिकली बाबर ये कहना चाहते थे दैट आई वांट कि ऐसे एक लैंड हो एंड इट हैज टू बी डिवाइडेड इनटू 4 इक्वल क्वार्टर्स और बीच में कोई बिल्डिंग बनी हुई हो. ओके, these gardens were called char bagh or 4 gardens because of their symmetrical division into quarters. Beginning with Akbar, some of the most beautiful char baghs were constructed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan in Kashmir, Agra and Delhi. Okay, I will show you the very small illustration of the char bagh under different rulers of Mughal dynasty. So we'll read Mughal char baghs. This is the char bagh in Humayun's tomb, Delhi, which was built between 1562 to 1571. So here is the tomb in the center and here is the char bagh. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the center, you have the tomb. Okay. Second, the char bagh adapted as a riverfront garden at Lal Meher Bari in 1637. Okay. Then the third image is showing the terraced char bagh at Shalimar Gardens, Kashmir, built in 1620 and 1634. Okay, so these were the few blueprints and designs of very small changes were done to the char bagh design and system, and it was continued by various kings one after another, especially under the tenure of Jahangir and Shah Jahan. Also, there were certain and several important architectural innovations during Akbar's reign. For inspiration, Akbar's architects turned to the tombs of his Central Asian ancestor Timur. जैसे तिमुर ने अपने पैलेसेस बनाए थे, लगभग the architects of the Akbar's reign started copying some of the ideas and designs. Let me tell you those features which were inspired from the Timur's ideas and culture. The central towering dome, एक ऐसा हॉल होगा और बीच में एक ऐसा बड़ा सा डोम होगा, and the tall gateway known as the pishtaq became important aspects of Mughal architecture. आप फतेहपुर सीकरी में ही देख लो. फतेहपुर सीकरी has a great gateway and a big dome in the main hall. You can see it in the Humayun's tomb as well. Humayun tomb के बाहर एक बहुत बड़ा gateway है, and inside the tomb there is a big towering dome, a central towering dome. The tomb was placed in the center of a huge formal charbagh and built in the tradition known as Eight Paradises or Hushed Behisht. That means a central hall surrounded by 8 rooms. So क्या है? First feature was that you will have to have a central towering dome. Number 1. Second, you will have a tall gateway. Okay. Number 3, you have to have the tomb in the center of a charbagh. For example, if this is the charbagh, that means 1, 2, 3, as I showed you in the earlier slide. And in the center, you will have the tomb. Okay. Number 3. And number 4 is that you have to have 8 paradises. That means in the hall, there are 8 rooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that. Okay. So basically, you have to have the hushed, behished style in your tomb. And you have to have the tomb in the center of the charbagh. You have to have a central towering dome and a tall gateway. Okay. The building was constructed with red sandstone edged with white marble. पूरा white marble use नहीं करना है. Red sandstone के साथ white marble use करना है. Though Shahjahan used complete white marble for the construction of Taj Mahal, right? It was during Jahan's reign, by Jahan I mean Shah Jahan's reign, that the different elements of Mughal architecture were fused together. जब शाहजहां ने अपना आर्किटेक्चर शुरू किया ना, he fused together all the ideas and designs. उसने बोला मैं सब कुछ मिक्स कर दूंगा. And he created a grand harmonious synthesis. उसने मार्बल भी यूज करा, उसने सैंडस्टोन भी यूज करा, उसने डोम भी बनाया, उसने गेटवे भी बनाया, उसने चारबाग भी बनाया, but with a very little twist and turn. Okay? And the most attractive point is that his reign witnessed a huge amount of construction activity, especially in Agra and Delhi. The ceremonial halls of public as well as private audience. That means for public it was Diwan-e-Aam and for private audience it was Diwan-e-Khas, right? So the ceremonial halls of public and private audience, that means the Diwan-e-Aam and the Diwan-e-Khas, were carefully planned. Placed within a large courtyard, these courts were also described as Chihil Sutun, which we call as 40 pillared halls, because that pillar had almost 40 pillars around it. Okay, that hall was based on the support of 40 pillars in the hall. Okay, Shah Jahan's audience halls were especially constructed to resemble a mosque. ज़्यादातर वो audience के hall ऐसे ही बनवाता था, which can resemble the design of a mosque. The pedestal on which his throne was placed was frequently described as the Qibla. उस पेडेस्टल को किबला बोलते थे, थ्रोन को किबला नहीं बोलते थे. जिस पेडेस्टल पर थ्रोन होता था, इस पेडेस्टल को we used to call as Qibla. The direction faced by Muslims at prayer, since everybody faced that direction when court was in session. So basically, all the audience and the king used to face in a particular direction. King किसी एक तरफ देखता था और audience किसी एक तरफ देखती थी, so that they can be in that proper direction which the Muslims face, especially during the time of their prayer. Prayer के time पे they focus on one direction, ना किसी एक direction में देख के पूजा की जाती है. So that direction was used by Shah Jahan as well during his court with the people, or when the court was in session. No matter which court, whether Diwan-e-Aam, whether Diwan-e-Khas, in both the sessions, the court, the people were used to face in that direction which resembles the prayer period of Muslims as well. Okay. Now what these architectural designs and features used to tell that king was the representative. The king was directed as a representative of God on earth, shadow of God, and was suggested by these architectural features only. The connection between royal justice and the imperial court was emphasized by Shah Jahan in his newly constructed court in Red Fort at Delhi. Behind the emperor's throne was a series of Pietra Dura inlays that depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus playing the lute. लूटना एक ऐसे इंस्ट्रूमेंट होता है which looks like a very small version of guitar, actually not a guitar but a very small version of it, and it has this circular form over here from which you play the strings. Okay, so Petra Diora inlays were there on the emperor's throne, and in that Petra Diora inlays it was depicted that Greek god Orpheus is playing the lute. Why this god Orpheus? Because it was believed that Orpheus music could calm the ferocious beast as well until they coexisted together peaceably. The construction of Shah Jahan's audience hall, Diwan-e Aam, aimed to communicate that the king's justice would treat the high and the low as equals, creating a world where all could live together in harmony. क्या मतलब है जस्टिस का? चाहे आपका क्रीड कोई भी हो, चाहे आपका कास्ट कोई भी हो, whether you are rich or poor, belonging to any creed, class, family, no matter what, king will give you justice and all can live in harmony in king's reign. In the early years of his reign, Shah Jahan's capital was at Agra, a city where the nobility had constructed their homes on the bank of the river Yamuna. But later on, he shifted his capital to Shah Jahanabad, the city which he himself established. Important feature is that these were set in the midst of formal gardens constructed in the Char Bagh format. Format wahi rahega, okay? Equal quarters. The Char Bagh garden also had a variation that historians describe as the riverfront garden. I will show you a map of this riverfront garden, okay? In this, the dwelling was not located in the middle of the Char Bagh, but at its edge, ekdam kone mein kahin, edge pe, close to the bank of the river. Shah Jahan adapted the riverfront garden in the layout of the Taj Mahal, the grandest architectural accomplishment of his reign. Here, the white marble mausoleum was placed on a terrace by the edge of the river, and the garden was to its south. So basically, ताजमहल कैसे बनाया गया है? एक ऐसे pedestal है, उसके ऊपर ताजमहल है, and उसके south में there is this garden in the Char Bagh format. Okay, Shah Jahan developed this architectural form as a means to control the access that nobles had to the river. ये ऐसे रिवर यमुना जा रही है और ऐसे कोने में यहाँ ताजमहल बना दिया था शाहजहां ने, so that he can see that what nobles are doing with the resourceful river. Okay, I will show you the map, then you will get to know that where Taj Mahal is located, where the river Yamuna is flowing, where nobles used to live, and how Shah Jahan used to have a look and control. Okay, in the new city of Shah Jahanabad that he constructed in Delhi, the imperial palace commanded the riverfront. Palace के बाहर ही river front बना दिया था. So basically, if this is the river and you create a front, so basically you create garden on both sides of the river for the scenic view as well, and also so that the king can have a control and supervision of what nobles are doing to the river. Only specially favored nobles like his eldest son Darashuko were given access to the river. All others had to construct their homes in the city away from the river Yamuna. रिवर के पास केवल उनको घर बनाने दिया गया which were who were favored nobles, जैसे कि दाराशिको was son of Shah Jahan and he was a very important noble in Shah Jahan's reign. So he and his likely nobles were allowed to have a palace near the river and have access to the river, but various other nobles were asked to construct their homes away from the river Yamuna. Okay children, here I am showing you a 1590 painting of Babur supervising workers laying out the Char Bagh style in Kabul. Note how the interesting channels on the path create the characteristic Char Bagh design. See the 4 columns. Okay. Acha. You will say 1590 तक तो बाबर मर चुके थे. Yes, he was dead by that point of time, but the painter was showing that Babur is instructing and supervising the workers. In this painting, he wanted to illustrate that with the help of a painting. Second picture is of Tomb of Humayun, constructed between 1562 and 1571. Can you see the water channels? These water channels, so that water can flow properly from one range to another. Okay, So these are the two images I wanted to show you. First is the painting of Babur instructing the workers regarding the Char Bahag design, and second was the tomb of Humayun constructed between the period of 1562 and 1571. This is the throne balcony in the Diwan-e-Aam in Delhi, and this is the place. This is Diwan-e-Aam arena, and this is the place where king used to sit in the Diwan-e-Aam conference among the ordinary people. That means the subjects of his town or of his kingdom. This Diwan-e-Aam, this balcony, was completed in the year 1648. That means in the era of Shah Jahan. Okay. Second image is of very famous seventh wonder Taj Mahal at Agra, completed in the year 1643. Definitely under the reign of Shah Jahan. Now the most important part of this Diwan-e-Aam is the Pietra Dura. The Pietra Dura colored. Can you see the background? This is Pietra Dura inlays. Hard stones placed in depressions, carved into marble or sandstone, creating beautiful ornate patterns. All this pattern. This is the most beautiful pattern which everyone needs to see the architectural style during the Mughal. The most important and most attractive point is the Pietra Dura, which was inlaid properly in the background of the seat of the king. Okay. See, here is a map, a reconstruction from a map of the riverfront garden city of Agra. So there's a garden city, you can see here, and basically they are making the riverfront so that people can enjoy the scene and the view. Note how the garden palaces of the nobles are placed on both of the banks of the river Yamuna. The Taj Mahal is on the left hand side. Can you see my arrow? The Taj Mahal is on the left hand side, and garden palaces of the nobles are placed on both the banks of the river Yamuna. Over here also the gardens are here, and over this side of the river gardens are also here. Okay, so this is known as the riverfront region for the scenic view of the city. This is the 1850 map of Shahjahanabad city established by Shah Jahan himself, and he wanted to shift the capital, right? Now, can you tell me where is the emperor's residence in this map? Can you tell me? Second question. The city appears to be very crowded, don't you think? Houses are there in the entire place. But did you notice many large gardens as well? You have to tell me, yes or no. Third question. Can you find the main street and the Jami Masjid? Can you find that? So, three questions. First, where is the emperor's residence? Second, can you find large gardens? Third, what is the main street and where is Jami Masjid? Now let's learn about the topic region and empire. As construction activity increased between the 8th and 18th centuries, there was also a considerable sharing of ideas across region. किसी एक region में कुछ बन रहा है, so the other regions shared their ideas of architectural styles and this, basically the beauty, the inscriptions, the kind of sculptures and all the infrastructure around that region. The traditions of one region were adopted by another. In Vijayanagar, for example, the elephant stables of the rulers were strongly influenced by the style of architecture found in the adjoining sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. So basically the idea and the style of elephant stables were adopted by these dynasties, the sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. But it was Vijayanagar Empire found it attractive and they got influenced by this style, and they also built the elephant stables for the ruler. Another example of sharing of these ideas in Vrindavan, which is in Uttar Pradesh near Mathura, temples were constructed in architectural styles that were very similar to the Mughal palaces in Fatehpur Sikri. So basically the Vrindavan temples got influenced by the style of Mughal palaces in the Fatehpur Sikri. The creation of large empires that brought different regions under their rule helped in the cross-fertilization of artistic forms and architectural styles. So basically big empires, for example, let's talk about Mughal Empire only. They had a control over the region of Gujarat also, over the region of Bengal also. So they synthesized the ideas of both the region into their architectural style. क्योंकि वो तो गुजरात के भी आइडियाज को देख रहे हैं, वो बंगाल के भी आर्किटेक्चरल स्टाइल को देख रहे हैं. So they made such buildings which had the synthesis of the designs belonging to Gujarat region as well as Bengal region. Okay, so these large empires who ruled over different regions in the country helped in the cross-fertilization of such artistic forms and the architectural styles. Okay? Mughal rulers were particularly skilled in adapting regional architectural styles in the construction of their own buildings. In Bengal, for example, the local rulers had developed a roof that was designed to resemble a thatched hut, जिसको हम बंगाली डोम कहते हैं. वो एक ऐसा डोम बनाते थे which used to look like a thatched hut. Okay, I will show you a picture, don't worry. I will show you what a thatched hut or this Bengali dome used to look like. They were very famous for it, and Mughals were very impressed from this Bengali dome style of architecture. Okay, the Mughals liked this Bangla dome so much that they used it in their architecture also. उन्हें इतना पसंद आ गया, उन्होंने बोला वो अपने architecture अपनी buildings में भी use करेंगे. The impact of other regions was also evident. In Akbar's capital, Fatehpur Sikri, many of the buildings show the influence of the architectural styles of Gujarat and Malwa as well. So basically, you can see that they are using the ideas of different regions in their architectural designs and style. So you can say that the architecture under Mughals were a synthesis symbolizing the style and architecture of various regions. Even though the authority of the Mughal rulers waned in 18th century, the architectural styles developed under their patronage were constantly used and adapted by other rulers as well whenever they tried to establish their own kingdoms. Marathas ke region maybe we see various architectural styles inspired by the Mughal architecture. In the Deccan Sultanate also we see various styles inspired from the Mughal architecture. In the Chola region also, the modern Chola region also, we see various styles which are a synthesis of the Dravidian as well as the architectural and Persian style. Okay. This is the interior of temple of Govind Dev in Vrindavan, Uttar Pradesh, built in 1590. The temple was constructed out of red sandstone. So there is a sandstone which is red in color, and this Govind Deva temple was built in red sandstone. Now, the most important feature of this temple. Notice the 2 out of 4 intersecting arches that made the high ceiling roof. So, I'll show you the arches. Arch number 1, arch number 2, arch number 3 and arch number 4. Okay. These are 4 arches. And these 2 arches, 1 and 2. 1 and 2. These are intersecting. Can you see these intersecting arches? Right? This intersecting arches and this style of architecture is from northeast Iran, Khurasan. There's a place in Iran, Khurasan, where this style of architecture emerged. And this style, this intersecting arches, this style was used in Fatehpur Sikri as well. Okay. Second image shown here is a decorated pillars and struts holding the extension of the roof in Jodhbai Palace in Fatehpur Sikri. I told you that Fatehpur Sikri कैसे city complex है जहाँ पे बहुत सारे ऐसे architecture बने हुए हैं, एक बड़ा सा दरवाजा बना हुआ है, and various complex and buildings are made inside that complex. There's a complex, a small city or a town has a big gate, a very big massive gate to enter the town and the city, and then there are various buildings inside of it. So you can see these decorated pillars and the strut. These struts are holding the extension of roof. ये roof देखो आगे तक extend हो रही है, right? And these struts are holding the extension. And this is an image of the Jodhbai Palace, which is in Fatehpur Sikri. These follow the architectural traditions of the Gujarat region. ये कहाँ का design है? ये गुजरात का design है. Okay. These intersecting arches was designed from the northeast Iran, Khurasan, and this struts holding the extension of the roof. This design belongs to the Gujarati region. Now let's come to the story of elsewhere, as we do in every chapter. So basically we were reading about the rulers and the buildings in India, and that is why we are reading the architecture and building around the world as well. So here is one such instance of information, churches that touched the skies. So basically from the 12th century onwards, 12th century means 1100 to 1199. So from 12th century onwards, attempts began in France to build churches that were taller and lighter than earlier buildings. पहली बात तो ये बोला गया that they have to be more taller and have to be lighter in weight. हल्का होना है. Okay, light pillars, light beams, light stretch on the church, everything has to be lighter than the earlier buildings. This architectural style, known as the Gothic style of architecture, was distinguished by high pointed arches. Pointed arches. Okay. The use of stained glass, stained basically having some or the other color, stained glass, often painted with scenes drawn from the Bible. बाइबल की किसी भी एक पार्ट ऑफ स्टोरी को ड्रॉ किया जाता था इन्हीं ग्लासेस पे, एंड देन दोज स्टेन्ड ग्लासेस वर यूज्ड to decorate the arches of the church, and then the flying buttresses. The buttresses has to be flying. So this entire design and this entire theme of making the church an architectural style was known as the Gothic style of architecture. Okay, and it became famous after 12th century, starting from France. Tall spires and bell towers, which were visible from a distance, were added to the church. Church में अब दो एक बहुत important चीज ऐड कर दी गई थी, the tall spirals and the bell towers. Okay, I will show you the image also how these churches having the Gothic style of architecture used to look like. One of the best examples of this architectural style is the Church of Notre Dame in Paris, which was constructed through several decades in the 12th and the 13th centuries. इतना बड़ा आर्किटेक्चर था ये that it took centuries to complete this Notre Dame church in Paris. Okay, and this is the finest example of Gothic style of architecture in the world. Okay, there are more architecture and buildings and churches as well, but this Notre Dame is the epitome. It's the best example of Gothic style of architecture being built in France. Okay, this is the Notre Dame church in Paris. Okay, now let's read some associated keywords of the chapter. Oops, but here are no words because I have an activity for you. Okay, and the activity is that you have to go through the chapter and you have to make your own list of 6 keywords, your favorite words from the chapter. Favorite words from the chapter. But for each of these words, you have to write a sentence also, and you have to tell why you chose that word. Okay, why you chose that word, you have to tell it, and you have to write a sentence about it. Okay, so you can make your own list of 6 keywords, only 6 keywords from the chapter. So go revise the chapter once again, look at all the slides and pick 6 most favorite words. Okay, and then write a sentence about it, that why you chose that word. All right, let's recall the chapter with the help of some exercises. First question: how is the Trabeat principle of architecture different from the Arcuate principle? We read about it also. Trabeat principle of architecture is different from the Arcuate principle in the following way. क्या होता है? In the Trabeat principle, a horizontal beam is placed across 2 vertical columns and roofs. Doors and windows are made. And in the Arcuate principle, the bricks are joined in an arch shape on a wooden plank put on 2 vertical columns, doors, windows and roof, and are made arch shaped. यहाँ पे arch shaped और यहाँ पे rectangular base है, correct? The weight of the doors and windows is carried by arches. पूरा arch doors as well as windows के weight को संभालता है, right? But here there's a beam. यहाँ पे ऐसे 2 पिलर बनाए जाते हैं ट्राबियट प्रिंसिपल में. बीम बनाया जाता है, पहले पिलर होते हैं फिर बीम होता है, एंड देन यहाँ पे एक डोर विंडो जो लगाना लगा सकते हो आप, ऐसे होता है. बट यहाँ पे सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, सारा जो मैनेजमेंट है वो ये आर्च करता है. एंड दिस आर्च इज मेड अप ऑफ ब्रिक्स, प्रॉपर ब्रिक्स. ओके, bricks are placed in such a way that it creates an arch. The keystone of the arch transfers the weight on the bases of the arch. ये जो arch का ये portion है, it transfers the weight to the base of the arch. So basically everything is done by the ground at the end. और यहाँ पर everything is done by the beam, the rectangular beam. Okay. Question number 2. What is a shikhar? I showed you also. The topmost pointed portion of a temple. एक temple होता है और एकदम last में ऐसे शिखर बना होता है. The pointed portion, and that is known as shikhar. Question number 3. Very simple. What is pietra dura? Pietra dura is the inlays. Basically, it's a form of picture or series of picture that depicted the legendary Greek god Orpheus playing the flute and sometimes lute also. Okay. What are the elements of a Mughal Char Bagh garden, or you can say Char Bagh garden as you pronounce it? Mughal Char Bagh consists of 4 gardens as demarcated by the name also. These gardens are placed within rectangular walled enclosure and divided into 4 quarters by artificial channel. ताजमहल के बाहर भी ऐसी 4 बाग form of garden बनाया गया है, and here is the main monument. Okay, so this was the Char Bagh model of architecture in the Mughals. Okay, question number 5. How did a temple communicate the importance of a king? How did temple can say that how much a king is important or not? As you know, temple was the most important form of architecture being built by king in all the centuries, be it ancient history, medieval history. Temple played a great role, especially if the king is a Hindu king, right? Because that symbolizes the faith of the Raja. That symbolizes the common point between king and its people, or you can say it's his subjects, right? Temples communicated the importance of a king in the following manner. Kaise? Number 1, name of the temples and the king were more almost similar. हमेशा ऐसे कोशिश की जाती थी that the name of the temple, the god being enshrined inside the temple, and the name of the king must be similar. For example, the king was Raj Deva. Temple's name built by him was Rajeshwara, and the god being enshrined inside the temple was Rajeshwaram. So it was always kept in mind that you have to keep the name of the king, the name of the temple, and the god being enshrined inside the temple has to be same so that people can relate the king with the god. Okay. The main gods were identical in name with the king. जितने भी main gods होते थे ना, the main basically the gods in which a lot of people had faith in, all those gods were identical in name with the kings. That means the name of the kings were kept along with the name of God. The main gods were identical in name with the kings. Then lesser deities were gods and goddesses of the allies and subordinates of the ruler. The subordinates and ruler के with link to that, the gods and goddesses of the allies were less. Then temple was the miniature model of the world ruled by the king and his allies. King और उसके allies जैसा भी world rule करते थे, temple used to basically demarcate or symbolize it. Okay, it was a miniature model of the world of the king. That means the kingdom of the king. Okay, now coming on to question number 6. An inscription in Shah Jahan's Diwan-e-Khas. That means the place, the segment of the palace which were for special people. वहाँ पे merchants, traders, important ministers and scholars used to come, right? Okay. An inscription in Shah Jahan's Diwan-e-Khas in Delhi stated, if there is paradise on earth, it is here, it is here, it is here. How was this image created? How was this image created? We want to know. Okay. Why you think that Diwan-e-Khas was a paradise? Why Shah Jahan said it that Diwan-e-Khas is a paradise? Shah Jahan's Diwan-e-Khas was designed in such a way that it fused together in a grand harmonious synthesis. Okay, there was synthesis of ideas and designs. Ideas and designs. Okay. Second, it was planned very carefully. It was very carefully planned that what segment belongs to what region, where the king will sit, what designs depict what message. Every design has a message behind. Okay, so it was carefully planned. It was placed within a large courtyard. Okay, so that it can have a major access to people and people can see it from a far distance as well, that this is the most important place in the entire palace. Behind the emperor's throne, there were a series of pietra dura inlays. Again, design, right? to show the architectural style and structure. Then it depicted the legendary god Orpheus playing the lute. Lute एक instrument होता है. It resembles not guitar, I should say, but it's a very small version of guitar, something like this. Okay, lute. The Diwan-e-Khas was aimed to communicate that the king's justice would treat the high and the low as equals, because Diwan-e-Khas was the place where all the policy making was done. सारे ministers यहीं आते थे and all the policy making was done. And policy was done in such a way that king has to provide justice to all, whether a person belongs to a high class, low class, any religion, any cult, any culture, whatsoever. Okay, creating a world where all could live together in harmony. The Diwan-e-Khas reflected the image of a paradise in itself. Okay, so this was the reason why Shah Jahan called Diwan-e-Khas a paradise, because first, the location where it was placed, the designs, the structure, the architectural style, and especially the Pietra Dura inlays and the god playing the lute, showing so many symbols and giving so many message behind each design and sculpture. Coming on to question number 7, a very important question. How did the Mughal court suggest that everyone, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the weak, received justice equally from the emperor? उनके कोर्ट से कैसे बता सकते हो? You've read about the Mughal court and the buildings, right? And the architecture about Mughals. Now you have to tell, how did the court decided or suggested that everyone, whether rich or poor, powerful or weak, received equal justice from the emperor? Do you have any answer? The perfect answer is the Diwan-e-Aam. The most important feature in the Mughal architecture was creation of Diwan-e-Aam. एक separate hall बनाया गया था for the common public, जहाँ कोई भी आ सकता था. As poor as a peasant or artisan, as rich as a trader or merchant, anyone could come in that hall and can ask for justice from the emperor. The Diwan-e-Aam of the Mughal court suggested that justice was made for all in an equal way. The construction of Shah Jahan's audience hall was designed to communicate that the king's justice was equal for the high and the low. Its aim was to create a world where all could live together in harmony. There was no difference between the rich and poor in the emperor's court. Okay? Coming on to question number 8. What role did the Yamuna, river Yamuna, play in the layout of the new Mughal city, Shahjahanabad? Okay? So basically we have to tell what was the importance of Yamuna with regard to the new Mughal city, Shahjahanabad. The answer is, Yamuna played the following role in the layout of the new Mughal city at Shahjahanabad. First thing, the palace was commanded by the riverfront. So here is the palace, here is the river flowing. Such a beautiful scenery, right? Second, only the specially favored nobles like Dara Shikoh were given access to the river. All others had to construct their houses far away from the river Yamuna. Okay, so this was the main layout regarding the river with Shahjahanabad, the new city. Shahjahanabad was the new Mughal city when Shah Jahan, the Mughal emperor, Shah Jahan decided to shift the Mughal capital from Agra. उन्होंने बोला अब आगरा में कैपिटल नहीं रहेगी, we'll shift to Shahjahanabad. So he built this city when Shah Jahan decided to shift the capital from Agra in the year 1639. 1639. Okay. With this, we have come to the end of our chapter number 5, Rulers and Buildings. Thank you. Happy learning. Revise well. We'll see you in the next one.